The heat hit them first. It wasn't just warm, it was suffocating, the kind of dry Australian heat that wrapped around your body like a suffocating shroud. The bus rattled down a narrow dirt road, kicking up thick clouds of ochre dust that clung to the windows. Inside, 6 American tourists sweated through their shirts, each regretting ever signing up for the authentic Outback experience they'd found online for a suspiciously low price. "Dude, I swear this thing's gonna fall apart before we even get to the Outback," muttered Jared, a college backpacker with sunburn already spreading across his nose. "It's part of the adventure," laughed his girlfriend, Lexi, though her smile was tight. The bus's interior smelled of stale sweat, gasoline, and something metallic, like rust, or blood. Up front, the driver, an unshaven, leathery man named Baz, chugged a beer and tapped the steering wheel with one hand while steering with the other. His partner, Mick, a stocky redhead with a crooked grin, turned in his seat to face the group. "All right, mates, we're just about to hit Wallaroo Ridge," he shouted, his thick accent slurring. "That's prime Dropbear territory, so keep your eyes peeled, eh?" The tourists chuckled. Everyone knew about Dropbears, the fictional, killer koalas Australians joked about to mess with foreigners. Big, bloodthirsty marsupials that dropped from trees and ripped your face off. Pure nonsense, but good for a laugh. "Are those, like, real?" asked Stacy, a nervous woman in her 30s, clutching her water bottle. Mick grinned wider. "Oh, they're real all right. You'll see." Baz barked out a laugh. "Yeah, better rub some Vegemite behind your ears. Keeps em away." The group laughed uneasily. The bus finally lurched to a stop at a lonely clearing surrounded by spindly eucalyptus trees. The air shimmered with heat, and the faint drone of flies filled the silence. Beyond the clearing lay miles of bushland, dense, shimmering, and eerily still. Baz stumbled out of the driver's seat and slammed the bus door. "All right, gang, this here's where we set up for lunch. After that, we'll take you on a little Dropbear hunt, eh?" He winked. Lexi frowned. "Wait, you mean like a fake one, right? Like a tour thing?" Mick slapped the side of the bus, grinning. "You'll see. It's all in good fun." They unloaded sandwiches, a cooler full of beer, and a plastic koala costume that looked like it had been pulled out of a dumpster. The plan, apparently, was simple. Mick would climb a tree and jump down wearing the costume, scaring the tourists while Baz filmed it for their promo video. The tourists rolled their eyes but played along. After all, it was harmless. Or so they thought. By late afternoon, the heat had thickened. The air was heavy with the sickly sweet scent of eucalyptus. The tourists wandered through the trees, snapping photos and joking about killer koalas. Somewhere deeper in the bush, a kookaburra cackled, its laughter echoing strangely, like mockery. Baz whispered into his walkie-talkie, "You in position, Mick?" Static. Then a hissed reply, "Yeah, mate. About to drop down when they walk under." Baz smirked. He signaled the group to walk toward a specific tree. Jared squinted upward, shading his eyes. "Wait, is that?" A dark shape moved among the branches. Something fell. A blur of gray fur slammed into the ground beside them with a thud that shook the dirt. Stacy screamed. Lexi jumped back, heart pounding, then laughed when she saw the fake koala head rolling away. "Mick, you idiot!" Baz shouted, laughing. "You missed, Em." But the laughter died quickly. Mick wasn't getting up. His costume was torn open, shredded, not by the fall, but by something else. His face was frozen mid-scream, eyes glassy, throat ripped wide open. Blood soaked into the red dust beneath him. The tourists stared in horror. Baz stumbled forward, dropping to his knees. "Mick? Oi, mate. Mick." He shook him, but the body was limp. Then came the sound, wet chewing, faint but distinct, above them. Lexi slowly tilted her head back. High in the branches, shapes moved, dozens of them. Thick, matted fur. Glinting eyes that reflected the dying sunlight. Claws like daggers curling around the bark. The sound of rasping breath and low, guttural growls filled the air. One of the shapes hissed, a deep rumble that vibrated through the clearing. Jared took a step back. What the hell, those aren't. Then it dropped. A monstrous creature, like a koala, but wrong, slammed into Jared's chest, driving him into the dirt. Its eyes were blood red, its fur patchy and diseased, and its mouth was filled with jagged yellow teeth. It shrieked, a sound that was half growl, half human scream. It tore into Jared's shoulder, ripping through flesh like paper. Panic erupted. Stacy bolted toward the bus, screaming. Baz fumbled for his keys, but his hands were shaking too hard. Lexi could only stare as blood sprayed across the windshield. From the trees above, more shadows stirred. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. The Dropbears were real. And they were hungry. The sky turned red as the sun dipped below the horizon. The forest began to tremble with their cries. And somewhere deep in the eucalyptus grove, a larger silhouette shifted, its massive claws scraping against bark, its breath wheezing like wind through bone. The Koala King had awoken. The hunt had begun. The world dissolved into chaos. Screams echoed through the dusty clearing as the Dropbears poured from the trees, furred nightmares dropping like stones, their snarls wet and animalistic. Baz managed to start the bus, its engine coughing and choking, but the creatures were already upon it. One smashed through the windshield, claws carving through glass and skin. Lexi dragged Jared's bleeding body toward the back door, her hands slick with his blood. Come on, Jared. Come on. His eyes were wild with pain, lips trembling. They're not real, he muttered, voice fading. They can't be real. But the shrieks outside made it clear, they were real, and worse than anything imagined. Stacy stumbled into the bush, tripping over a tree root as something heavy landed behind her. She didn't look back. She could hear it breathing, short, rapid, and angry. The smell was unbearable, like wet fur and rot. Then claws wrapped around her ankle. She screamed, kicked free, and bolted deeper into the forest. Branches slashed her face, her lungs burned, and she didn't dare stop until the sound of growls faded behind her. When she finally collapsed, gasping for air, she realized she was alone. The bushland stretched endlessly around her, the light fading fast. Silence. She pressed her hand to her bleeding cheek. Her fingers trembled as she took in her surroundings. The trees here were thicker, their trunks scarred and gouged, as if something enormous had been climbing them for years. Shredded bits of fur clung to the bark. Eucalyptus leaves covered the ground like a soft, deceptive carpet, their sweet scent masking the copper tang of blood. Something was wrong with the air itself. It felt heavy, alive. Then she heard the whispering. Not human, soft, breathy hissing that seemed to come from the trees themselves. Her pulse quickened. Who's there? She croaked, her voice breaking. A low growl answered. She froze. From the shadows, two glowing eyes appeared. Then another pair. And another. Within seconds, the forest canopy seemed to come alive with dozens of glimmering orbs. The Dropbears. They were watching her. A rustle came from her left, and a shape crawled down a tree, slow, deliberate, almost intelligent. The creature was massive, its fur slick with patches of dark red. Its jaw quivered, teeth clicking together as saliva dripped down its chin. Its pupils were thin slits, like a reptile's. Then it sniffed the air, once, twice, and gave a soft, almost curious cooing sound. Stacy took a step back. A low rumble vibrated through the ground, deep and resonant, coming from behind the trees. Every Dropbear froze instantly, their ears twitching. The growl deepened into something primal and commanding. They lowered their heads. And then it appeared. From behind the trees, the koala king emerged, a towering monstrosity of fur, muscle, and decay. Its body was twice the size of a man, its face scarred and half exposed, one eye clouded over with milky white. Thick cords of drool hung from its mouth as it dragged itself forward on gnarled claws. The smaller Dropbears whimpered as it passed. Stacy's voice trembled. Oh my God! The creature turned its single, burning eye toward her. Its nostrils flared. It smiled. That human-like curl of the lips broke her. She screamed and ran, stumbling through the trees, branches tearing at her arms. Behind her came the sound of pursuit, the pattering of claws, the snapping of bark. She burst into a clearing, a strange, open patch filled with bones. Hundreds of them. Rib cages, skulls, femurs, all gnawed clean. Eucalyptus leaves fluttered down from above, landing silently among the remains. The smell was overpowering, rot, musk, and old death. She gagged and fell to her knees. Something crunched under her palm. She looked down. A camera. The cracked lens stared back at her like a dead eye. The sticker on the back read Wallaroo Outback Tours. She wasn't the first. And she wouldn't be the last. A shadow fell across her. She turned slowly. A Dropbear loomed above her, hanging upside down from a branch. Its head twisted unnaturally far to the side, mouth widening with a crack of bone. Please, she whispered. It hissed, and the next sound she heard was her own scream, cut short as its claws ripped through her throat. Back at the wrecked bus, Lexi dragged Jared's limp body into the darkness, hiding behind a fallen tree. Baz stumbled nearby, covered in blood, his own or someone else's, he couldn't tell. They could hear the creatures feasting on Mick's remains. Wet tearing, guttural grunts, the crunch of bone. Lexi pressed her hand to Jared's mouth to muffle his groans. Tears streamed down her face. Baz leaned closer, whispering, "They don't hunt by sight, they hunt by smell." "How do you know that?" she hissed. He swallowed hard. "Because this isn't the first time, love." Her eyes widened. Baz looked away, guilt flooding his weathered face. "This is how we got the damn tour bus cheap. The last crew never came back." From somewhere deep in the forest, that awful, resonant growl rose again. The Dropbears answered in unison, a chorus of shrieks that made the trees tremble. Lexi gripped Jared's cold hand as the sound closed in. The outback wasn't empty. It was alive. And it was hungry. The night came fast, swallowing the outback in a curtain of suffocating black. The moon hung low, pale and warped, filtering through the eucalyptus leaves like a jaundiced eye. The wind carried a faint scent of iron and decay, a warning, if anyone had been sane enough to listen. Lexi crouched behind the tree trunk, her breath trembling. Her hands were sticky with Jared's blood. He lay slumped against her leg, barely conscious, skin pale as ash. His chest rose and fell in weak, shallow breaths. "Stay with me, baby," she whispered, brushing the matted hair from his forehead. "We're gonna make it out. Just hang on." Baz sat a few feet away, clutching a rusted hunting knife he'd pulled from the tour gear. His eyes darted in every direction, pupils dilated. Every crack of bark made him twitch. Every gust of wind made him flinch. "They're watching," he muttered. "They don't sleep. Not the real ones." Lexi turned to him, her voice sharp and broken. "You said you'd done this before. You knew this could happen." He stared at the knife, voice trembling. "We didn't think they were real. Mick and I thought it was just stories, urban legends to freak out tourists. The first group, hell, we thought they'd just run off. But when we found their bus a week later," his voice trailed off, eyes glassy. "There wasn't enough left to bury." The forest exhaled, a low, shivering wind that sounded too much like breathing. Jared stirred, mumbling through cracked lips. There, up there. Lexi froze. The trees whispered. Leaves rustled, not from the wind, but from movement. Dozens of tiny sounds, a scratch here, a creak there. The branches above them shifted like muscles under skin. Baz stood, knife shaking in his hand. "Don't look up," he whispered. Lexi did. Eyes. Dozens of them. Reflecting the moonlight. Watching. Waiting. Then came the first drop. A sound like meat hitting dirt. Then another. And another. Heavy, wet thuds all around them. The Dropbears moved silently afterward, too silently. Baz swung the knife wildly, his voice breaking into a ragged scream. "Stay back. You hear me? Stay the hell back." Something dark and fast lunged from the side. Baz slashed, connecting with fur, but the creature barely reacted. It let out a guttural snarl, grabbed his wrist, and bit down. There was a sickening crack as bones shattered. Baz screamed, falling backward as the Dropbear tore into him. Lexi pulled Jared's limp arm over her shoulder and ran. Her feet slipped on blood-soaked dirt as Baz's screams echoed behind her, then cut off suddenly with a sharp, wet snap. She didn't look back. Branches clawed at her as she stumbled through the darkness, Jared dragging behind her like a weight. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle a predator. She tripped over a fallen log and fell hard. Jared landed beside her, motionless. "Jared," she gasped, shaking him. His eyes were open but unfocused. His breathing, gone. Lexi froze. Realization hitting her like a physical blow. No. No, 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 no. She pressed her hands against his chest, trying to find a heartbeat, but there was nothing. Then, faintly, his lips twitched. His head jerked to the side. His fingers clawed the dirt. "Jared?" He opened his mouth, blood bubbled up. But what came out wasn't his voice. A rasping, gurgling sound, low and animal. His eyes rolled back, pupils shrinking to slits. Lexi backed away as Jared's body convulsed. His bones cracked and popped, his jaw stretching unnaturally wide. Patches of fur sprouted along his neck. His teeth grew longer, sharper. She screamed. The Dropbears didn't just kill. They infected. Jared's eyes snapped open, red and glistening. His mouth twisted into a grotesque smile as a guttural growl escaped his throat. He moved faster than she could blink, grabbing her wrist with inhuman strength. "Lexi," he croaked, though the voice was no longer his. She screamed again and wrenched free, scrambling backward. He lunged, and she swung a fallen branch with all her strength. It cracked against his skull, sending him sprawling. She didn't stop to see if he got up. She ran. The forest seemed endless, a maze of twisted trees and bones hidden beneath the leaves. The air buzzed with the sound of wings, bats, maybe. Or something worse. Her lungs burned, and the ground felt alive beneath her feet, pulsing faintly. When she finally stumbled into a clearing, the sight made her stomach twist. A eucalyptus grove, but the trunks were coated in something slick and dark. She stepped closer and realized it wasn't sap. It was blood. Dozens of carcasses hung from the branches, kangaroos, wallabies, birds, all gutted and half-eaten. The air was thick with the stench of rot and ammonia. And in the center of it all stood a totem made of bones, human and animal, lashed together with strips of flesh. A crown of vertebrae hung from the top. The Koala King's mark. Lexi stumbled back, covering her mouth to keep from gagging. Then she saw something move near the totem, a shape, hunched and twitching. It was human. "Hey," she whispered hoarsely. "Oh my God, are you okay?" The figure turned. It was a woman, what was left of one. Her eyes were gone, her skin shredded, her body covered in bite marks. She smiled, lips torn and bleeding. "They're the guardians of the forest," she whispered, voice wet and broken. "He's awake now." Lexi froze. "Who's awake?" The woman pointed behind her. Lexi turned, slowly. The koala king loomed just beyond the totem, taller than before, its fur matted and crawling with parasites. "It's one good I burned like molten gold in the dark." Its breath rattled like a dying engine. Then it spoke, low, guttural, almost human. "Stay." Lexi ran as the drop bears shrieked and descended again, raining from the trees like a living storm. The night of blood had only just begun. Lexi didn't remember how long she ran. The outback night was endless, the dark so thick it seemed to swallow her whole. Her lungs burned, her throat raw from screaming, but she couldn't stop. Every few seconds, she thought she heard claws on bark, growls in the distance, the faint flutter of wings. She didn't care where she was going, only that it was away. But the forest didn't feel right anymore. The air had changed. The eucalyptus scent, once sweet and heavy, had turned sour, acrid, like decay laced with chemicals. Her head spun, vision blurring from exhaustion and dehydration. When she finally collapsed, it was on the edge of a ravine. The dirt beneath her hands was soft and damp. She blinked through the shadows and realized the earth was red, stained with blood. For a long moment, she lay there, listening. Silence. No growls, no movement. Only the wind sighing through the trees. Then she heard something strange. Drip. 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 She turned her head toward the sound. A hole. A perfectly round one in the earth, maybe 3 feet wide, with a slow trickle of thick, dark fluid dripping from its edge. The smell made her stomach twist. It wasn't water. It was blood. She crawled closer despite every instinct screaming no. Peering over the edge, she saw something she couldn't comprehend. Below her, deep within the pit, dozens, no, hundreds, of drop bears hung from the cavern ceiling like grotesque bats. Their fur was slick, their bodies twitching in slow, synchronized rhythm, as though breathing together. The hole wasn't a natural cave. It was a nest. The walls were lined with bones, human bones. Skulls embedded in the dirt like a warning. Lexi clamped her hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. Her entire body trembled as she backed away slowly, but her hand slipped in the wet soil. A rock dislodged, tumbling into the pit below. Every drop bear's head turned upward at once. Hundreds of red eyes opened in unison. The air went still. Then came the sound, a chorus of shrieks so loud it felt like the sky itself cracked open. Lexi stumbled to her feet and ran as the pit erupted behind her. The drop bears launched upward in a storm of claws and fur, bursting from the hole like a swarm of hell's own bats. She ran through the forest, branches tearing her skin, heart hammering in her chest. The shrieks followed her, high, deafening, closer every second. She tripped on a root, fell, and rolled into a ditch, gasping. Above her, the drop bears flew overhead, silhouettes against the moon, wings spread wide, moving like a black cloud. Lexi pressed herself flat, trembling, too terrified to breathe. When they were gone, the silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It watched her. Somewhere to her left, she heard quiet sobbing. She turned, freezing. A figure sat against a tree, arms wrapped around their knees, a young man, thin, shaking violently. His clothes were torn, his face smeared with blood. "Hey," Lexi whispered, crawling toward him. "It's okay. I'm human. I'm not one of them." He flinched, eyes wide. "You shouldn't talk," he whispered. "He'll hear you." "Who?" "The king." Lexi's heart dropped. "You've seen it?" The man nodded, his gaze distant. "I've been here 3 days. Maybe 4. Lost count. My friends, they tried to go back. The trees moved. We kept ending up in the same place. Then the ground opened up. The thing came out of it. It wasn't supposed to exist. He began to shake uncontrollably. It can speak. It knows our names. Lexi's breath caught. What's your name? Riley. Before she could reply, the forest around them shifted, an unnatural creaking, as if every tree was straining in one direction. Then came a faint sound, rhythmic and distant. Thump. 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 The sound of something walking. Something massive. Riley's eyes went wide. It's him. They crawled behind a fallen tree, holding their breath. The sound grew louder. The ground seemed to vibrate. Then they saw it, emerging through the trees like a living nightmare. The Koala King. Its body was enormous, covered in wet, matted fur that seemed to glisten in the moonlight. Its face was a patchwork of scars, flesh missing in strips that exposed raw sinew. Around its neck hung a necklace made of skulls. Its breath came in deep, rattling growls. And in its massive claws, it held something. Baz. Or what was left of him. His body dangled limply, half-eaten, the knife still clutched in one mangled hand. The king sniffed the air, then dropped the corpse with a dull thud. Smell that? The creature hissed, its voice like gravel dragged across metal. Still breathing. Riley grabbed Lexi's arm, shaking. It can smell us. The Koala King turned its head, sniffing. Its eye, white, dead, rolled, while the other, glowing and alive, locked onto the fallen log. Lexi's pulse exploded in her ears. She pressed her hand over her mouth, every muscle locked in place. Riley trembled beside her, silent tears running down his cheeks. The king lumbered closer. Its claws scraped against bark, slicing deep grooves. It leaned down, sniffing. Its nose brushed the log. Lexi could feel its breath, hot, foul, damp. Then something in the distance, a shriek, the cry of a Dropbear, distracted it. The king froze, lifted its head, and growled. The sound rolled through the forest like thunder. After a long, terrible pause, it turned and moved away, vanishing into the shadows. Lexi waited until the sound faded completely before exhaling. Her whole body shook violently. Riley whispered, "It's not just a predator. It's a god to them. A god of blood." Lexi turned to him, voice hoarse. "Then we have to kill a god." Riley almost laughed, but it came out as a broken sob. "You can't kill what the bush itself protects." Above them, a faint rustle broke the silence. Lexi looked up. A Dropbear hung upside down, inches from her face, its red eyes glowing in the dark. She didn't even have time to scream before it dropped. The Dropbear's weight crushed Lexi into the dirt. Its claws dug deep into her shoulders, the rancid smell of blood and rotting eucalyptus flooding her senses. She screamed and rolled, trying to pry the creature off, but it was fast, too fast. Its fur was wet, its breathing erratic, its mouth snapping inches from her face. Riley lunged, grabbing a jagged branch from the ground and driving it into the creature's side. The Dropbear shrieked, a sound that didn't belong in the world, and flailed violently before staggering back. Its yellow eyes blazed with fury. Riley stabbed again and again until its screams faded into a low gurgle. Lexi crawled away, her arms slick with blood. "It's not dead," she gasped, voice trembling. "I don't care," Riley panted. "We need to move." But it was moving. Its body twitched, its limbs cracking as if rearranging themselves. It was healing. The branch splintered out of its side and fell to the dirt, soaked in dark ichor. The Dropbear lifted its head again, jaw unhinging with a wet pop. Riley froze, eyes wide. What the hell are these things? Lexi grabbed his arm. Not human. Not animal. Something, between. The creature screeched, and they ran. The bush tore at them as they sprinted through the forest, feet slapping against red dirt. Branches cut their faces, their clothes shredded, but they didn't stop. The air vibrated with distant howls, dozens of them, echoing through the trees. Lexi's mind screamed, "We're being hunted." They reached a clearing, a wide circle beneath towering eucalyptus trees. But something was wrong. The air was thick with smoke. The trunks were charred black, and the ground was littered with bones. At the center of the clearing stood a massive rock formation, almost like an altar. Symbols had been carved into it, ancient markings, circles and runes smeared with old blood. "What the hell is this place?" Riley whispered. Lexi stepped closer. The carvings looked primitive but deliberate. Human skulls were wedged between the cracks, each one split open. She ran her hand over one of the symbols, it pulsed faintly under her fingers, as if alive. She recoiled. "This isn't natural." Riley nodded, trembling. "It's a shrine." The ground trembled beneath them. A low rumble filled the air, deep and resonant, like a growl that came from the earth itself. Then the trees around the clearing began to move. Dozens of dropbears crawled down the trunks, their movements slow and ritualistic. They weren't attacking. They were surrounding the shrine, eyes glowing red, bodies twitching with anticipation. Riley grabbed Lexi's wrist. "They're praying." The creatures began to make a sound, soft, almost like chanting. A guttural rhythm that rose and fell, a mix of growls and clicks. The sound built until the air itself seemed to vibrate. Then a deeper growl joined in. The Koala King stepped from the shadows. It was even larger now, bloated, its fur crawling with parasites, its body leaking thick black fluid that steamed in the cool night air. Its claws were the size of machetes, its face half-rotted and half-regal. Its single golden eye gleamed like a god surveying his altar. Riley and Lexi froze. The king sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring. "Blood," it rumbled. "Fresh." The dropbears screeched in unison, their cries sharp and ecstatic. Riley's knees buckled. "Oh God! It's feeding time." The king moved toward the altar and slammed its claws into the ground. The symbols lit up with a deep crimson glow. From beneath the rock, the earth split open, revealing a pit filled with writhing shadows. A stench of decay poured out, like meat left in the sun. Something moved in the pit. Lexi grabbed Riley's arm. "We have to go. Now." But the dropbears had formed a circle around them. There was nowhere to run. Their red eyes reflected the glowing symbols as they hissed and swayed. The Koala King raised one claw and pointed at them. "Offerings," it hissed. The dropbears shrieked and rushed forward. Riley swung the branch like a weapon, cracking skulls, breaking jaws, but they were endless. One leapt onto his back, biting deep into his neck. He screamed, choking as blood poured down his chest. "Riley!" Lexi screamed, trying to pull him away. He turned to her, eyes already fading, and shoved her hard. "Run!" She fell backward as the dropbears dragged him toward the pit. His screams were swallowed by the chanting and the sound of tearing flesh. The king bent low, pulling Riley's twitching body close. It opened its mouth wide, revealing a second row of teeth, and bit down. Blood splattered across its matted fur. The dropbears screeched in delight, feeding on what was left. Lexi stumbled to her feet, tears streaming down her face, and ran. She didn't look back, not even when she heard the cracking of bones and the slurping of flesh. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing beside a dead tree. Her hands shook uncontrollably. She was alone. Everyone was dead. Then she noticed something strange, the tree beside her had carvings on it. English letters, deep and jagged, etched into the bark. "Help US. They live in the trees." The words were old, faded, and stained dark. Beneath them was a smear of blood that looked too fresh. Lexi backed away, eyes darting upward. The branches above her creaked. Leaves shifted. A face stared down, a twisted, half-decayed human face, fused with fur and claws. It smiled. Her scream shattered the silence. The forest came alive again, full of motion and whispers. And somewhere in the distance, the koala king howled, a sound of triumph, of hunger, of something ancient that would never die. The drop bears had feasted. But the night was far from over. Lexi ran until her lungs felt like they were tearing apart. The bush seemed endless, trees closing in like skeletal arms, the ground soft and damp beneath her trembling feet. Every sound in the darkness felt alive. Every shadow seemed to breathe. Her throat burned from dehydration. Her head pounded. She had no sense of direction anymore, just pure, animal instinct screaming at her to move, to get away. But you can't run from the outback. Not here. It doesn't let you go. The wind carried the stench of rot and eucalyptus. That same smell that haunted every breath since the first attack. When she stumbled into another clearing, she almost didn't notice the faint light flickering ahead, a dim, sickly glow, like fire filtered through fog. For a fleeting second, hope flickered inside her. Someone, she croaked, voice broken and raw. She pushed through the trees and stopped dead. The light wasn't from a fire. It came from the ground. Hundreds of small glass jars, cracked, filthy, half buried in dirt, lined the clearing. Each one glowed faintly from inside, filled with some kind of phosphorescent liquid. But what was inside them wasn't light. It was movement. Tiny, writhing things. Fur. Claws. Eyes. Lexi stumbled back, her foot crunching on something brittle. She looked down, and nearly vomited. The ground was carpeted in bones. Not animal bones. Human. Ribcages, skulls, arms, all tangled like roots. And the jars, they weren't placed randomly. They formed a spiral. At the center of that spiral was a hole. She knew what it was before she even looked closer. The smell said it all. Another nest. A low, wet chittering echoed from below. The same sound that had haunted her dreams for 2 nights straight. The nest wasn't silent, it was alive. The air above it shimmered with heat, or maybe something worse. Lexi turned to run, but the ground beneath her gave way. She fell. Her scream was swallowed by the darkness. When she hit bottom, the impact drove the air from her lungs. She lay there, stunned, the darkness thick and suffocating. Her hand brushed against something wet. She pulled it back, trembling. It wasn't mud. It was blood. She tried to move, but something shifted in the dark beside her. Then another. The sound of claws on stone, breathing, raspy, close. Lexi's heart hammered. No, no, please. A faint voice replied. Who's there? She froze. The voice wasn't monstrous, it was human. Weak. Desperate. Who are you? She whispered. A beam of light flickered on. A flashlight. A man stood a few feet away, gaunt, shaking, his eyes hollow. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were shredded, his arms covered in claw marks. They took everyone, he whispered. Drag them down here. You shouldn't have come. Lexi crawled closer, her body trembling. How long have you been here? I don't know. The days don't matter down here. They feed, they sleep, and sometimes they talk. Lexi frowned. Talk. He nodded slowly, pointing toward the darkness beyond. They whisper to him. The king. He's deeper. In the roots. Before Lexi could respond, something dripped from the ceiling. She looked up. Dozens of drop bears clung to the cavern roof, upside down, motionless except for the slow rise and fall of their chests. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, red pinpricks staring down. The man reached for her hand. "Don't move," he whispered. "They're dreaming." Lexi froze. Every muscle locked. But the air was heavy with moisture and rot, and her body betrayed her. She coughed. It was small, barely audible. But it was enough. Every red eye above her snapped open. The Dropbears screeched, a piercing, collective howl that shook the cavern walls. They dropped, one after another, slamming into the ground, claws slashing through the dirt. Lexi and the man scrambled backward, tripping over bones. "This way," he shouted, pulling her toward a narrow tunnel at the edge of the chamber. They crawled through as the Dropbears swarmed behind, their snarls echoing like thunder. The tunnel opened into another chamber, larger, pulsating with faint red light. The walls were covered in a slick, fleshy membrane that pulsed like veins. The smell was unbearable. And in the center, half buried in roots and bone, something moved. It was massive, dozens of Dropbears fused together, forming a heaving, living mound of fur, eyes, and teeth. Their bodies were melded into the roots, twitching and muttering in broken voices. "The nest," the man gasped. "The queen." One of the fused faces turned toward them. Its jaw opened far too wide, and a single human voice slipped out, soft and trembling. "Help me!" Lexi screamed. The mound shuddered. Then, with a horrible tearing sound, a figure emerged from it, rising out of the mass like something reborn. Its fur was soaked in blood, its limbs long and sinewy, its face hidden in shadow. But its eye, its one gleaming golden eye, shone from beneath the roots. The Koala King. He wasn't just above the nest. He was the nest. Lexi backed away, sobbing. The man beside her dropped the flashlight, whispering prayers. The king's voice rumbled through the chamber like a storm. "You bring new flesh to feed the forest," it said. "You feed the dream. You become the dream." The Dropbears poured into the chamber, surrounding them like worshippers. The man turned to Lexi, despair written across his face. "It wants us alive." Lexi grabbed a bone shard from the ground, gripping it tight. "Then it's not getting me alive." She plunged the bone into one of the fleshy roots. A burst of dark fluid erupted, splattering her face. The walls screamed, 1,000 voices in unison. The king roared, the sound deafening. The ground shook violently. Dropbears shrieked in pain as the nest convulsed. Lexi grabbed the man's arm and ran toward a faint light ahead, another tunnel. Behind them, the king bellowed, his voice echoing through every root and stone. "You cannot leave the bush. You are the bush." The tunnel began to collapse, bones falling, dirt pouring down. Lexi stumbled through, gasping as the world behind her crumbled into chaos. When she finally burst into the open air, the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon. She fell to her knees, sobbing, shaking, covered in blood and dirt. The man crawled out beside her, gasping. "We made it," he whispered. But Lexi didn't answer. Because from the trees above, dozens of eyes blinked open again, watching. The bush was waking up. And dawn meant nothing out here. The dawn came quietly, painting the outback in streaks of dull orange and gold. But the light felt wrong, pale, hollow, and empty, like it didn't belong to the world anymore. Lexi sat frozen at the edge of the clearing, her body shaking uncontrollably. Every part of her screamed for rest, but she couldn't close her eyes, not even for a second. The forest breathed around her, slow and steady, as though something vast and unseen lay just beneath the soil. The man beside her, she still didn't know his name, sat hunched forward, muttering to himself. His pupils were dilated, and his face had that hollowed-out look of someone who'd already gone too far to come back. "You can't escape," he murmured. "It follows the scent. It remembers what's taken." Lexi turned to him, her throat dry. What are you talking about? He lifted trembling fingers to his temple, scratching at his scalp until thin trails of blood appeared. Once you see it, once you breathe it in, you're part of it. You're marked. Before she could answer, a sound drifted through the trees, a deep, rhythmic thump, thump, thump. Like the ground itself was beating with a massive heart. The air grew heavy. The eucalyptus trees began to sway without wind, their leaves whispering like 1,000 unseen mouths. Lexi staggered to her feet. We need to move. Now. The man didn't move. He was staring into the distance, at a line of trees trembling as if something enormous was moving through them. It's him, he whispered. The king. The next moment, the ground erupted. Roots burst through the earth, thick as serpents, writhing and curling. From beneath the soil, something vast began to rise, the koala king, dragging himself up from the underworld of roots and rot. He was bigger now, impossibly big. His body seemed to merge with the trees themselves, bark fusing into fur, eyes opening in the trunk of every eucalyptus around them. The scent of sap and blood was suffocating. Lexi stumbled backward, her scream caught in her throat. The man fell to his knees, whispering prayers that turned into mindless gibberish. He's the land, he's everything. The koala king opened his mouth, a cavernous, tooth-filled maw dripping dark sap. His voice rumbled across the clearing, deep and ancient. Why do you flee your mother's womb? You walked into her heart. You belong to her now. Lexi grabbed the man and dragged him toward the tour jeep she spotted half buried nearby, rusted, clawed apart, but still standing. We're not dying here, she screamed. The Dropbears were coming. Dozens, no, hundreds, of them, dropping from the treetops in waves. Their screams were like rusty saws scraping through metal. Some dragged themselves on twisted limbs, others bounded like rabid dogs. Lexi reached the jeep, yanked the door open, and shoved the man inside. She jumped in after him, slamming the door shut as the first Dropbear hit the hood. Its claws screeched against the metal, gouging deep scars. She jammed the key in the ignition. Miraculously, the engine coughed to life. Hold on, she yelled. The tires spun in the mud before finally catching traction. The jeep lurched forward, crashing through underbrush, smashing small trees aside. The Dropbears gave chase, screeching, their red eyes glowing like coals in the mirror. The man clutched the dashboard, shouting over the roar of the engine. You can't run. You can't. A root erupted from the ground, slamming into the side of the vehicle. The jeep flipped, spinning end over end before crashing down in a shower of glass and dirt. Lexi's vision went black for a moment. When she came to, the man was gone, ripped from the seat beside her. Blood smeared the shattered window. Something moved outside, slow, deliberate footsteps. Lexi dragged herself free from the wreckage, glass cutting her arms. The forest around her was alive, literally. The trees swayed and groaned, faces forming in their bark. The leaves whispered her name. Lexi. The koala king towered above, his golden eye fixed on her. He wasn't chasing her now. He was inviting her. At the center of the clearing, she saw it, the crown. A twisted ring of eucalyptus branches, bones, and fur, lying at the base of the largest tree. The roots pulsed beneath it like veins. She understood then. Every survivor, every scream, every drop of blood in this cursed forest fed him. And now, the king wanted her to take the crown, to replace what had been broken when she destroyed the nest. No, she whispered. I won't. She picked up a jagged piece of metal from the wreckage, the broken side mirror, still sharp. She raised it, her voice trembling. I'm ending this. The king tilted his massive head, almost amused. End? There is no end. There is only the bush. He reached for her, a root the size of a truck coiling through the air. Lexi plunged the metal shard into the ground, straight into one of the pulsing roots. A blinding flash erupted, white fire spreading through the forest floor like lightning. The drop bears shrieked. The trees convulsed. The air filled with smoke and burning sap. The koala king roared, his body fracturing, bark splitting, eyes bursting like overripe fruit. His form dissolved into flame and ash, carried upward on a wind that smelled like scorched leaves and blood. Lexi fell to her knees, coughing, as the forest burned around her. Then, silence. The wind died. The trees were still. The world went dark. When she awoke, the fire was gone. Only ash remained. She staggered to her feet, dazed, her head throbbing. The sun hung overhead, pale and empty. She began to walk. One step at a time. Hours later, a rescue helicopter spotted her staggering through the wasteland. They lifted her aboard, silent, shocked at her state. She didn't speak. She didn't even look at them. As they flew over the blackened bushland, she glanced down. Among the ashes, a single tree still stood, untouched, alive, its leaves glistening green. And in its branches, something moved. A small shape. Round ears. Sharp teeth. A drop bear. Watching her go. It blinked slowly. Then, from beneath the branches, roots began to twist again, forming a shape in the dirt. A circle. A crown. The camera of one rescuer, dangling from his neck, caught a single photograph before the helicopter disappeared over the horizon. Later, when the footage was reviewed, someone zoomed in on the shot. And in the middle of the clearing, burned into the earth, were two words spelled out in twisted, scorched roots. Welcome back. The drop bears never died. They were just waiting for her return.